We're starting off with Stephen Volders, Global Director at Vaimo, a leading digital commerce and experience agency that helps brands, retailers, and manufacturers succeed throughout the entire customer journey. Stephen has nearly 2 decades of experience in data-driven marketing with a passion for helping organizations grow their business based on data-driven insights. Today, Stephen will share some insightful best practices on how to leverage personalization and boost your e-commerce profitability. Stephen, we're delighted to have you.
Yes, thanks, Shannon. Pleasure to be here.
Yes, I'm very excited to learn more about personalization. So the stage is all yours.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. If
I'll
you
let you
can
know when
just,
you see your screen.
yeah,
Yeah,
I just need to share my screen. Oh,
perfect.
I think somebody needs to activate it for me. Yeah, thank you.
Great, take it away.
Great, you can see the full presentation. Yes, all right.
Yes.
Yeah, welcome everybody. So I'm Stephen Volders. I'm representing Vaimo. I'm a global director for our customer data insights and activation practice, and with my team, I've been working for a variety of different brands over the past 20 years, with a heavy focus on data, obviously. If we look at Vaimo specifically, we're focused on digital commerce, content management, data management, and insights and activation. And all of this we do to build great customer experiences, right? As I said, we've been doing that from a variety of brands. You can see some examples here. If you're interested in learning more, then don't hesitate to reach out. I'm going to keep this part very short. Right, let's start with the beginning. Let's clarify a bit. If we talk about personalization at scale, what do we mean exactly, right? Personalization at scale is for us the ability to deliver at scale individualized customer experiences. That's the first part. And it's important that we say the ability, right? Because we can know a lot about a customer, but we always need to balance to avoid not being too intrusive, right? So that's a process to go through to see what works and what doesn't work. So it's about the ability to have that. It's also important that we can do that across all touch points. A customer nowadays interacts with a brand on a variety of different touch points, and the customer journey is also not linear. So that's another challenge. So we want to do all of that across all touch points in a consistent and effective way. And we want to do that whereby each interaction with a customer can be tailored to the specific preferences, behaviors, and needs, which in the end, of course, results in a desired outcome. So this is what we mean with personalization at scale. Now, why is that important? If you look at research, and there's plenty of research out there, it really shows that customers nowadays, they expect to have personalized interactions. Research from McKinsey from a few years ago shows that the vast majority of customers confirm that they really expect to have personalized interactions. And moreover, the majority also confirms that they're much more likely to consider purchasing from a brand if they interact in a personalized way. So it's clear that from a customer point of view, this is the expectation, right? This is the expectation nowadays that we as brands, that we communicate in a relevant way to our consumers, and often that will be in a personalized way. On the other hand, if we look at it from a company perspective, we see that companies that are doing personalization right can increase their overall revenue by 10 to 15% thanks to personalization. And the real leaders in this category, the best in class, they can even increase up to 25%. So we see that customers expect it, and we see that it is valuable for a brand in the end. We can do personalization in very different levels, right? So we can identify several levels of maturity, let's say. And please listen carefully, because I'd like to ask you guys the question right after to see where you are in your personalization journey. The first level that we see is no personalization at all. So basically, the content and the products that you provide to customers is one size fits all, right? You don't really personalize on any of the channels. The second one is that you're doing that on a single channel. So maybe you started experimenting with personalization and you do that maybe in email or maybe on your website or whatever the channel is for you, where you started your personalization journey. So that's the second level. The third level is that we start experimenting on multiple channels. So we're doing that across multiple channels. At this stage, there is basic data exchanges, right, to make the experience as personalized as possible, but there is not yet a real centralized view of the customer. So it's not optimal yet, but we're doing that across multiple channels. A fourth one is that we're really capable of personalizing across the customer journey, meaning across all channels that we have. And it's typically based already on a centralized profile of the customer. So that's what we call omnichannel personalization. If we do that in an optimized way, where we really have a centralized, unified data model with a central view of the customer, where there's also direct feedback from interactions with the brand, with personalization experiences. If all of that is happening in a very optimal flow, where we also have the capability to really do real-time and predictive personalization, then we talk about hyper-personalization. So I think the 5 phases are quite straightforward. Now, let's have a look at the maturity that you have in your organization. So please join me in this poll and take your mobile phone, just scan the QR code and you will end up in the poll. You can select one option and then don't forget to submit. If that doesn't work, you can also go to menti.com and use the code that you can see on the screen here. I'll just give it a moment. Let's have a look. I see there's some answers coming in. I hope we'll have a few more. Yes. I'll just show you the 5 levels. Let's give it a few more. Again, there's no wrong answers. This is just to get an indication. So for the ones just joining, if you want to join the poll, please scan the QR code, or you can go to menti.com and use the code on the screen to join the poll. All right. I can see that the majority is a bit in the center, a mix between single and cross-channel, and that's what I've seen in previous situations where I did this poll before. So that means a lot of organizations probably start experimenting with personalization. Some of them do that even on more than one channel, but there is still work to be done, right? Because we've seen that customers expect it. We know that it has a positive impact on the business, but still very few do that in an optimal way. Now, how does that come? In fact, because managing great experiences is not so easy. It's challenging, right? And I'd like to compare this with a Formula One race. In a Formula One race, everything has to come together and has to be optimized when it comes to engineering, car design, car mechanics, the data and the race strategy. Everything involved there needs to come together and needs to be optimal for you to be able to win that race, right? And with digital and with generic customer experiences, it's very similar. There are so many different things involved that need to be optimal to really win the customer and make sure that the customer continues in its journey in an optimal way instead of leaving for maybe the competition, right? Now, where do we start? Often when we think about personalization at scale, we tend to think about technology, right? Because there's definitely technology involved. And the challenge is then also, what is the right technology to invest in? And I'd like to refer to the hype cycle of Gartner, which shows, in fact, the typical phases of every technology that is entering the market. You can see the same phases when a technology enters a big organization, right? So let me explain the phases. So the first one is there is a technology trigger. So there's a certain need for something and a technology comes up. And in the beginning, we tend to be very enthusiastic, even a bit over enthusiastic. And we reach at some point a peak of inflated expectations. And behind that phase, next to that phase, the expectations drop because we see that the technology, in fact, is not really delivering what we hoped it would deliver. So we go through this phase to the throw of disillusionment before we enter the slope of alignment, where we see real use cases appearing before we reach the plateau of productivity. These are the typical phases of any technology entering the market, and you could see the same in an organization. Now, the challenge is that when we invest in technology, that we invest at the right moment. Because if we invest too early, we tend to overinvest. If we get fully excited about a certain technology and we do that too early, we tend to overinvest. Because soon after we see that the value is not really there. When we reach the peak of inflated expectations, often that is followed by a lot of technologies that are being de-invested in. When we're further in the cycle, people and companies tend to reinvest when they see the real use cases popping up and there is really value and maturity in a certain technology. Right? So the challenge is that we focus on this optimal, what we sometimes call Goldilocks zone, the yellow zone here, not too early. We need to avoid that we have to disinvest. We need to focus at the right moment in this technology to make our investments efficient and effective, right? But in fact, we shouldn't start with technology at all. And let's have a look at how Apple, today one of the biggest tech companies, has been managing this in the past. We all know Apple, co-founded in the 70s by Steve Jobs and a few other people. And they started to compete with IBM on personal computers. And after a power struggle, Steve Jobs left in '85, but he came back about a decade later, right? So he came back, and Apple was at that moment still in quite a challenging position. So we had to take some drastic decisions. And one thing that he did was he stopped the investments in what is called OpenDoc. OpenDoc was a multi-platform software component framework that was a standard created by Apple. So it was a very advanced technology. And at some point, Steve Jobs was speaking at this worldwide developer conference in '97. And at some point, he got a lot of pushback by a participant in the audience who literally said, look, you don't really know what you're doing. Why do you stop the investment in this technology? So it was a bit of a shock to the audience, and he had to think a bit on how to come back. And he said, yeah, probably this gentleman is right in some ways, because this technology is probably great at doing certain things that I'm not even aware of, maybe better than a lot of competitors and so on. But the question is, can we turn this into a $10 billion sales a year, which was his objective, right? And the answer was no. So we stopped the investments in this technology. We all know what happened after. Apple grew to, at some point, the biggest tech company in the world. Now they're, I think, number 3. But the big message behind this you've got to start from the customer experience and work backwards to technology. Often in marketing technology, we think about the latest suite or the latest nice new product or the latest new buzzword that we heard, and then we like to embrace this technology. But we need to do that with care, right? We need to start looking at the customer and work backwards to the technology. Now, how do we do that? Of course, I guess none of us has, or most of us don't have the ambition to sell $10 billion of product a year. Maybe some of you do. But the point is we need to clarify what is our vision, what is our mission, what is our objective as a business leader. And starting from that, we also need to look at, obviously, the customer. What is our target customer? What are the key profiles? Maybe if you want to work with personas, that's one way of doing it. You need to identify the key journeys that a customer goes through. And from that, you can identify real use cases relevant to your business. And you can translate those use cases in required capabilities. What do we need exactly to achieve our mission, which we translated into use cases? How can we do that? And only then you can talk about how effectively can we do that? What is the solution design behind? What is the architecture behind that we need with the different tools, right? When we are defining these use cases, we see that one of the key capabilities that we need is to have a single view of the customer. And that's not surprisingly because this is already data from 3-4 years ago, so it's even increased. But the average customer has a lot of different connected devices. That can be a laptop, that can be a mobile phone, that can be a TV, a smartwatch, whatever. There's plenty of connected devices that people use nowadays. Depending on the region, this can be more or this can be less. I took a bit the average that we see there in that research. Another important metric to look at here is that companies on average, they have 16 different sources to leverage customer data. So imagine that you want to optimize your customer journey, but the data of the customer is spread across plenty of different tools. This is reality today with nearly all companies that we talk to. This is very normal. We grew into this situation, right? But the situation only gets worse when you really want to get insights and want to focus on the engagement with the customer. Then the number grows to 25. This is averages, of course. We know we work also with very big organizations. Numbers are much, much higher than this. But already imagine in this scenario that you need to connect all these data sources together and do that in an efficient and fast way, in a compliant way. This is mission impossible, right? So we need to have the single view of the customer, whereby we have a platform that can enable us to bring together data from many different data sources. And we are using obviously many different identifiers. So we need both known customer data and unknown, or let's say pseudonymous customer data. So it can be data based on an email or a client ID. It could also be a device ID, or maybe even still a cookie ID in some cases, and so on and so on. We need to have a platform that can bring together, that can stitch these different profiles together to one customer profile, right? That's what we want to achieve. That's what we need if we really want to personalize across the whole journey. So identity stitching, as said, is one of the key features in that solution that we need to have a single view of the customer. Obviously, we also need to have data storage, which is fast, reliable, and easily accessible. So it's not just for reporting purposes, it's also for analysis purposes, and also to retrieve the data whenever we need it, right? So it needs to be fast whenever we need it. We need to have a platform that enables us to do advanced segmentation, to identify easily certain segments, certain cohorts in your customer base or in your visitor base that show an interest in a certain product, or where we believe that they would be interested in a certain product. Another important topic here is that we do all that in a way that is compliant with regulations, with GDPR and other regulations. And that's, of course, a big challenge if your customer data is spread across multiple different tools and is used across a set of other tools out there to manage the journey. That's nearly impossible, right? So we need to have this as a feature in this centralized platform. We also need to have a unified data model. If we really want to work with the data in an efficient way, and if we want to leverage this for machine learning and AI, we need to have a unified data model to do that in an efficient and effective way, right? So there's different key features that we need to facilitate all that. And in the end, we want to use that data, that audience data, to interact better on different touch points. It can be advertising. So it could be that we decide to target certain messages, certain advertising to a specific set of customers because we know that we believe that they're interested in it, or we know that they didn't buy the product yet. And so on. It can be many different scenarios. We also want to use that data to optimize across our digital channels, like websites, mobile applications, maybe kiosk applications, or whatever else. We want to leverage that customer data there as well to optimize the experience in those parts of the journey. And we also want to use it in our customer systems like CRM, marketing automation, call center, and so on and so on. You can think about any scenario, but wherever you have a touch point with your customer, we want to be as relevant as possible. So we need to have a platform that is facilitating doing that. Now, for the ones that followed a bit the market, of course, one possibility is, of course, that you work with a CDP, because a CDP can help you solve the majority of these challenges. Either you can build it yourself, which is a very big challenge and expensive to build and maintain, and also keep into account the time to market that you would have or you would miss out on if you would have to build it yourself. But a CDP is a platform that I would advise you to look into if you want to do personalization at scale. Now, the past years, we've also seen that the whole MarTech space, let's say, evolved into a more composable approach, right? So let's compare a bit the more typical packaged approach versus the more composable approach. A packaged approach, we can say, look, typically if the vendor provided a suite of products, and probably they're integrated, let's call it like that, and they're positioned like that on the market, that's what we call a packaged software. But it could also be a standalone packaged software, but it is packaged software which is intended to work like that. If we talk about CDP, it could be that your CDP in that case is enabling you to centralize all that data from multiple different data sources, doing the segmentation and so on, and providing those segments, and also doing the activation, sending emails, sending an SMS, and so on. It could be that your CDP does that in the same platform. That's also an example of a more packaged software. Now, all those more traditional packaged software are evolving more and more into a composable approach. A composable approach is with a very open architecture where you can, let's say, pick and choose the right solutions on the market, and they would be integrated together, right? That is the ambition of a composable architecture. So you can work a bit more with best of breed. I'm not promoting one or the other. I just want to clarify a bit what are both options, right? So packaged you could see as a bit more out of the box. It comes with a lot of features that are ready for you to use. Of course, you need to configure the tool and so on. There is still work to be done, but it has a certain set of features that gets you up to speed quite soon with a certain set of use cases. And so that is one of the advantages of a packaged software. A composable software comes with less out of the box, but you have more flexibility. That's one way to look at it. You have more flexibility to build things around it or use another tool and integrate with that, right? We could say that packaged is traditionally more business-minded because it's typically more user-friendly. It's easier to, it's typically faster to implement, and faster to get going. And composable is more IT optimized. At least if you have to start, right, then it's a bigger step to take. So faster time to market. We could say that package is faster time to market, composable slower. And I'm taking the note here, depending on the maturity of the organization, because if your organization already is in a full composable setup, then it's faster to build on top of that, right? Then you might be able to be even faster with certain use cases than going back to a packaged software. Packaged, typically you work with a more limited set of vendors. That's at least what you try to do to keep it manageable. And composable is easier to work with multiple set of vendors. It's up to you to choose what you prefer, and both have pros and cons, right? When we look at CDP, packaged typically stores the data in the CDP, and with composable, we would store the data, or at least a big part of the data, in the data warehouse. Data warehouse has also evolved from a more, let's say, one-way and static solution, typically for reporting and maybe still some analytics, but it evolved to an environment which can assess in two directions in real time, data in, but also data out. So that's a different approach for data warehouses. So the whole industry of CDP has been evolving to be more composable, whereby even the packaged software is more integrated with data warehouses and gives you that possibility. So again, it's up to you to see what to decide here, but I wouldn't choose composable as your strategy. It's more, we know that we're evolving in this direction, but don't take that as your top priority, I would say. Try to nuance that a bit, see what's important for you at this stage. Where are we in overall tech adoption? Let's have a quick look. So this is coming from an research of Gartner, the hype cycle of data and analytics from 2023. I divided into 4 phases. I don't have another poll ready, but if we would check and maybe do that just for yourself, composable data and analytics, where do you think we are in the first phase, where we're still early and where we tend to overinvest, or are we in the second phase, where we tend to disinvest, where we are past the peak of inflated expectations, or do you think we're already, about to reach maturity? So the trough of disillusionment, we're getting out of that. Do you think we're there? That's number 3. Or the slope of enlightenment. This is where we really reach maturity. So where do you think we are with composable data and analytics? Just do that for yourself. And the same for customer data platform. So I'll give you a bit of time to think about it. The thing is, if we look at composable, I have a software engineering background myself. I really believe in it, and it's really the way we have to go. But know that we're still very early. Let's say maybe now we are at the peak, or because this is from 2023, but we're still early. So it might be that when you go composable, you will see that it has certain advantages, but you also will miss out on certain things that are not provided and that you would have to build yourself, or by finding yet another technology that would help you out there. So it's not optimal yet. If we look at CDP, on the other hand, we're really maturing in that market, and so that's more the area to reinvest at the moment. It must be said, the majority of CDP players is offering a more and more composable approach. So, but don't go full composable. That would be my 50 cents on this thing. So let's move on. Another topic. When we want to do personalization at scale, we also want to have a single view of product, right? Because there's more content than ever needed to provide all these personalized experiences. So let's take a simulation. Let's take an example. Imagine that we have 1,000 products. I know some of you will have less products. Maybe you're in banking and finance and you just have 30, 40 products, or maybe you're a retailer with 100,000 products. Just follow the example to see the effect. Imagine 1,000. Imagine we have 25 assets per product. So that can be different versions of an image, maybe a video, maybe a documentation sheet, maybe requirements, specifications, whatever. It can be a variety of different things, right? So then we already have 25,000 assets. Imagine we have 15 global regions. So that adds up, right? Imagine that we have thousands of customers and contacts. So easily you end up in millions of assets variations. And the variables can be different for your specific situation, but the end result is the same. We have this challenge that in order to service these customer experiences, which are expected to be more and more personalized, we need a lot of assets, right? So we need to have a central solution that is enabling us to manage that in an efficient way and to also maybe generate new variants. So there is solutions on the market since many, many years to generate automatically different versions of images, for example, and so on. Now, if we move further, obviously to AI, we cannot do a presentation without talking about AI, right? And also in this space, there is a lot of possibilities that AI can boost your personalization capabilities. So you can obviously use it to create assets and variations. So you don't have to fly anymore to South Africa to a very nice region with maybe a few models and of the car brand that you have and some models to take a nice picture, right? You don't have to do that. A lot of brands just generate this by AI. They use existing assets and they're generating visualizations which are more relevant to the customer, maybe with another background, and so on and so on. So this is already applied and used, and this will only increase. You can also use it to help you build out your content strategy. You can even use it to do content creation if you want, right? Writing text and so on. I wouldn't advise to fully rely on it, but you can do it in a much more efficient way, that's for sure. We can use it in chatbots. There is nothing more annoying than a chatbot which is pre-configured in a very bad way, which is simply wasting your time often. Now with AI coming up, they will get much smarter, and yeah, that's amazing what we can do with AI. We can better predict behavior, obviously, and intent, because if we have a lot of data items, a lot of data points, AI can help us to much better predict what a customer wants. We can also do much better customer segmentation. It's also applied already and more to democratize data and democratize to get value from data, because often you still need to have a data analyst working on those tools to analyze data and generate the relevant insights. More and more of that is assisted by AI. You can even request certain insights via simple questions. You don't anymore have to write SQL code or programming code to get that out. When the AI platform is set up correctly and is fed with your data, yeah, then you can do amazing things there. If you want to know more about AI, we have a free webinar. You can download that. We go much more in detail there with a few partners of ours, so feel free to scan the code and download it as you like. So AI is very powerful. It will change. It's already changing all of our lives. And it will make us all be more efficient and effective. That's at least one thing that it will do. But on the other hand, it's also important to state that great experiences, they're not really created, right? It's not that we bring all these capabilities together, we implement them, and it is there. It's not the case. That's just the starting point, because great experiences are crafted. They are crafted by people through iterative processes. When we have certain capabilities to personalize, we have to validate that this hypothesis for improvement, if it is then a personalization case, that it works. It could be that a certain personalization case is too intrusive, that you will notice that in fact it is not improving your conversion because it is too intrusive for the user, for the customer. So we have to experiment with that, and we have to find the right balance to make that work. The thing is, if you want to succeed in working data-driven, if you want to succeed in doing personalization at scale, you need to mature in not just technology, you need to mature in each of these 5 domains. This is a framework that we apply for big transformations. So focus on, start with the purpose, start with defining this mission, this vision, clear objectives across the traditional silos, right? It's already an organizational challenge to do that in big organizations. That's one. You need to put things in place that you know how to measure your success and that your teams are aligned with that. So these first two big areas that will help you as an organization to go for one big vision and try to move in that direction as effective and efficient as possible. Of course, you need to have the right platform. We talked about that, but you also need to have the right people in place with the right skills, the right knowledge, the right culture, and you need to have the right processes to make all of that happen. So there is much more beneath that, but try to focus on these 5 and try to build it out gradually. Rome wasn't built in a day, so personalization is also a journey. It's a process on itself to evolve towards, right? I'd like to end with this last point. So what you see here is a team that just lost the game. But the important thing is, in fact, what the team does after, right? This is not a losing team. They lost the game, but it's not a losing team. It's what you do after, right? It's the fact that afterwards they get their head up again, and they will not blame each other. They try to identify what went wrong and they try to improve, and they will be better in the next game. And that's how you will win as a team. So the point is that you need to foster a culture of failure, right? Also in a company, the company objectives might be fixed, but the way to get there, that should be flexible. So you need people with the right mindset. And in order to succeed, the desire for success should be greater than your fear of failure. So if failure is not allowed, let's say, in an organization, people will not try whatever needed to make it happen, right? So that's important to try to focus on the cultural part as well in an organization, that in the operations, you have this flexibility to fail, but fail fast and go for your target. I'd like to end with the key takeaways. So if you want to succeed in doing all this, define your purpose. Dream big, start small. Start from the customer and work backwards to technology, not the other way around. Focus your investments on your Goldilocks zone, so the optimal zone, not too early, not too late. Try to do that in the optimal moment. Look at technology on the market, but also the phase of a certain technology in your organization, because you might be faster or maybe slower than the general market. Single view of product, single view of customers. Customer is absolute key to facilitate personalization, and keep in mind that great experiences are crafted by people through iterative processes. So facilitate this culture of failure, where failure is allowed as long as you learn from it, right? And my last point, I'd like to invite you as well for a webinar I'm hosting next week around customer journey analytics. So if you really want to get some tips and tricks and best practices on how to get real value from understanding your customer across his journey, then definitely register for this webinar. And that's it. So I'd like to wrap up here and give the word back to Shanna.
Thank you, Stephen. That was very inspiring. I loved your points about starting with the customer and then, crafting the user experience and being able to test and fail fast. That's very important for an organization, and to have that culture in place.
Thank you.
We do have a couple questions coming in from our audience. The first one is, what are some considerations for personalizing the shopping experience for B2B buyers compared to B2C customers? Can you comment on that?
Yes, absolutely. In general, if it's now B2C or B2B, we always want to find the right balance, right? In the end, we want to have the most relevant experience for the consumer, even in B2B, right? In B2B, there might also be competition, right? Some big organizations have multiple suppliers, And so if the experience with your company is less optimal, less relevant than with competitors, then it's a logic evolution that they would move more to your competition. So it's definitely relevant in B2B as well. B2B comes with other challenges. So you need to be careful that if you look at, for example, a CDP, that it also leverages certain capabilities which are relevant for B2B, like account-based marketing and so on. So it comes maybe with a specific set of features, but definitely it's as relevant as B2C, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Great. And another question here about privacy concerns and data protection regulations, and how does that fit in with personalization?
Yeah, that's a very good point, because indeed that challenge becomes only bigger. The more we want to or the more data we have, the bigger that challenge becomes, right? And so if we have a central point of reference for our customers, for example, then we can manage that better. And the tools available on the market, one does that better than the other, but this is a key area to focus on as well. So if you're evaluating a CDP that you're thinking about purchasing or working with, that should be one consideration to make. Like, how can we manage our customers' data in a compliant way? Yeah, so there's these tools provide mechanisms, features in place to do that, and they will avoid using certain data in a certain activation context when it's not allowed. So these
Right.
mechanisms are built in there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to know. Um, and another question here, I'll kind of paraphrase this. What are some common challenges businesses face when they're first starting out with personalization, and what can we do to avoid those?
Yeah, I think there's many. A mistake that has been made so many times is just buying a certain technology and then expecting magic to happen, right? That
Mm,
is what's done a lot, because people forget that we need to have certain processes in place, certain people, and first and foremost, we have to start with the business, the objectives, and which use cases do we effectively want to implement. Don't buy the latest tool with all the nice bells and whistles. We need to look what's relevant for us as a business. So that is definitely one mistake. Start from your business, define the right use cases, and work from there to what you need as capabilities. And capabilities will translate into platform tools, but also processes, people, and so on. So that's coming back to the 5 Ps that I shared earlier. So focus on all of
yes.
those, identify what you need in these 5 areas, and then put that in a roadmap and go gradually, uh, step by step. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. The next question is, how can companies personalize the experience for new customers who have limited purchase history data? So if they don't have a lot of data to work from, where can they start?
Yeah, that's a good point. You can bring together data from different sources. So you can work with partners. That's one thing. You can also um, via advertising, for example,
Hmm.
that starts anonymous, but you can link those and stitch those behaviors at some point to a user when they log in. So this is also something that a CDP nowadays leverages. We used to manage these things in what we called a DMP, a data management platform, but a DMP was predominantly focused on using cookie IDs, and we all know that third-party cookies IDs are less and less relevant. In fact, their lifespan is less big. Sometimes it's no longer relevant after a session that you have on a website, for example. So we will not recognize you after based on that. But this is all changing, and with a CDP, it facilitates using multiple different identifiers. We also see that, yeah, many platforms use authentication of a user as a reference point, right? So you have to log into the
Right.
platform. If you have a possibility to push your users to log in, that's also a recommendation. Go for that, because
Mm,
that's the,
right.
yeah, then you can leverage your first party data even better. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And you started out by talking about the growth that customers can see, like, anywhere from 10% up to 25%. Can you share any case studies of companies that have implemented personalization successfully and seen that type of growth?
we have been doing that for many organizations, but to name one and give the details, I'm afraid I can't do that because we need to have the agreement of our customers to talk about specific data and KPIs, but we see similar
Yeah, you
things
don't have
like
to mention
that.
the name, but maybe just give like an
Yeah.
example of their journey and how they did it.
Oh yeah, one example is in the banking and finance industry. When we started personalizing that journey, we were really able to make the shift from the branch-based business that a bank typically was 15 years ago, let's say, to
Mm-hmm.
now nearly fully digital because we interact with our bank in the pocket, right, in our mobile app predominantly. So yes, we have been able to really make that shift, and that goes much more than increase of 25% on digital. That's really making a shift from traditional, more offline to majority doing that online. So yeah, but we
Great.
can, if people are interested, we can come with specific examples and use cases that are relevant for your business because there's so many different verticals and
Right.
so many different situations that it's hard to give one that is maybe fully accurate for all. Yeah.
You want to personalize the case study.
We try to be as accurate as possible, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And how can businesses measure the effectiveness of their personalization strategies to make sure that they're reaching the desired outcomes? Like you mentioned, some might be too intrusive, and
Yeah.
how can they measure that and test
Yeah,
it?
in fact, definitely for the digital part of your customer journey, personalization should be part of your CRO efforts, your conversion rate optimization efforts, where you test your A/B test new variants. A personalization case is also a new variant, right? So you need to test that and validate that experience with your um, with your current experience. And even if you have a personalized one that is better, try to test it with a slightly improved version and so on. So also that is a process because
Mm,
sometimes we see that it's in very small differences that just the way you describe the label on a personalization element on a page makes the difference. So it's very
mm.
important that you test that effectively indeed and not just implement.
Right. Test every component and change one thing at a time so you know what's
Yeah,
moving the
I
needle.
wouldn't say everything because it might not be feasible, but try to focus on the right things and
Hmm.
then test and validate before making a big investment to to implement the personalization. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. Test quickly, right? And or fail quickly and iterate.
absolutely. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, no big
Yeah.
development of 6 months and then implement.
Right.
Try to do a smaller case and test it out. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Stephen, for your presentation today, and thanks everyone for submitting all the questions. We'll take a short break now and be back in a few minutes with our next session. So stay with us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.